Are we ready?
Yeah, let's do this. All right, my name's Cailean Babcock.
I'm C.C. Haydel.
And we're sitting down having our first proto-podcast. Yet to be determined.
Right.
I think at one point I was like, when we were here one evening, you and I were fairly lubricated. I was like,
right,
we should call it on off the back of the napkin or something, right out of the back pocket. Or,
something, right.
It seemed a good idea at the time. Like,
we'll come up with something. We'll come up with something, guys.
Yeah, beer, woo, you know. Anyway, it's hard to be unique nowadays, but, you know, trying to cut through the noise of so much stuff out there, right?
It's that's part of the deal, though. It's, okay, so I'll tell you, like, from my experience here just at the restaurant.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, we should mention we're recording from the lovely establishment of CC's.
Bistro New Orleans.
Yeah. Plug away, right? Plug away, right?
Oh, yeah, right. Plug away. Bistro New Orleans, Kitorie in Osaka.
Yes. It's a very fine establishment.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And when people look at my menu, a lot of people like looking through the menu. In many cases, they'll order the same thing anyway. But they always want to look through the menu, and invariably somebody will say, you have so many choices. Not like the diners back home.
Sure.
Because, the diners back, especially in New York and New Jersey,
mm-hmm.
those pages, you can get 16 pages worth of food. I want to know where they put it all.
Right.
It's like Jack in the Box. I'm like, Jack in the Box is a box, and they have 800 items. Not really, but people talk about now, going back to what you said earlier about they have all these choices and they have all this stuff and all of this information, and you say, well, I have too much information. Yeah, it does. You got to winnow through it,
and it encourages laziness.
It does.
I say encourages. I'm going to throw my hands up and go back to my previous whatever.
I'm going to be a troglodyte and get off the internet.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's hard, right? It's not fun.
I think people. Again, and maybe this is from my formal training and experience as an English teacher, but you just learn to winnow faster.
Winnow faster, yeah.
Right? Like, okay.
That's true. Critical thinking, right?
People say, well, I go through my Facebook feeds and, and I get upset and I get this and I get that. And, in terms of growth, I think that you get better at it. If you're not getting any better at ignoring things and saying that you don't care, or this is too much information, I'm overwhelmed all the time.
Right.
Then you're not making a conscious effort. You're still trying to engage every post.
Yeah, and I think that, like, one of the things that, we live in an interesting time because you and I both grew up in a time before the internet, right?
Right.
I remember seeing, in college, my end of my first year in college, and seeing the first web page and thinking, I'll never catch on. I didn't think I would never catch on, but I thought it was a bit gimmicky. I had experienced a year of the internet before the web, right? When it was all email and text-based stuff, right?
Right.
And strangely enough, there was a lot of popular internet services that were, for some reason, named after characters from Archie comics. That was a thing. So anyway, but we grew up in a time where everything was newspapers and magazines and TV, right?
Right.
And there was, you can argue that maybe because of that, people were maybe more potentially controlled by mainstream media, because everybody now calls it MSM, mainstream media, and they say, well, it's broken and it's just basically run by whatever group I currently don't like. And there may be certain justification that it's been spoiled by the 24-hour news cycle, and it's been spoiled by sponsors wanting to push for numbers, right?
Right.
And then the internet has further refine that by saying, well, you know what, we're going to take your profile of interests, and we're going to make sure that we funnel only those things that you're actually interested in into your feed, which sounds like a good deal for helping you kind of like separate the sound from the noise, like the actual good stuff from just the random background stuff. Like, nobody likes random ads, so we'll only show you the ads you like, right? Which is the intention, and Google and Facebook made their money off of that. Yeah. But the problem we've gotten to now is that you only see the stuff that you agree with. Right. And now you're screwed. And the reason why you're screwed is because now all of a sudden the world completely magically supports everything you believe in.
Exactly. Well, that is... And unfortunately, kids get that early on, as soon as they become net savvy.
Sure.
I'm not going to say not open to the net, because they haven't been on. They have to be on long enough for at least these services to figure out what they want.
Right.
And, I mean, I get it if you're selling stuff. But, and going back to what we mentioned before we even started the show today, that whole anti-intellectualism, which is based on, okay, well, here's one side, here's another side, here's the argument in the middle, and here's how you make up your mind. Mike Rowe used to do dirty jobs.
Yeah.
Right. And he said, it doesn't make a difference which party you're part of. What you're supposed to do is think about how you really feel about these things. Think about how it's going to affect everything, and then make an informed choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
He says, right. I see people now, and I'm like, we're not rooting for our sports teams. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Saints fan, right? I have been since I was old enough to know. I guess 6, 7 years old. And, the only time I'm never going to root for the Saints is if they leave New Orleans. And then I'll hate them. And it'll all be irrational. But it doesn't matter, because it's a sport. It's something that I can feel good about because it might represent my city. But ultimately, they don't make choices that
influence your life.
A lot. Okay, I might have a hangover.
The Saints don't sit there and say, by the way, we're defunding your school. And
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Whether or not we win the next game determines whether or not we're going to license that pipeline.
Right. I might be a little depressed on Monday, maybe a little hungover, but I'm not. Right.
We're gamifying everything.
Yes.
In a way. And it kind of goes back to, I think, like, the form of government you have reflects how power is being distributed. In other words, back in the day we had kings and lords and knights because a trained knight on horseback with suit armor was a devastating weapon.
Right.
And then we invented the crossbow.
Right.
And suddenly power became a lot more democratic. and it went on from there. So basically forms of government have evolved to reflect the fact that if everybody can own a gun, you better listen to what they say, because they could be coming to shoot you the next day if they don't like it.
Yeah.
And so, and now we've got the internet where, I don't know, it's too much information. Mm-hmm. At the same time, being able to discover that even though you might be the one weird guy in your neighborhood, there's 1,000 people out there that have formed a website that all share your particular foible or fetish, and all of a sudden you feel validated.
Yeah.
And it's created this tribalism, which is kind of, I think, human nature's natural state. Mm-hmm. But instead of your local tribe, where you actually have to work with people in your neighborhood, because whether you like them or not, they are your community. You form this virtual community, which is comforting, but at the same time abstract.
Yeah.
So geography breaks down, which can be seen as a good thing, but at the same time, I think that it's creating the snowball effect, and that's why we're getting like this kind of polarization and extremism that we have nowadays.
Because I see people that they're like, well, I'm a Republican, well, I'm a Democrat, well, And I'm like, well, you're not on it. I mean, okay. Strictly speaking, yes, you're on a team.
Sure.
However, it's more of an alliance, so to speak, in that you're like, okay, well, I lean this way. But no one's open to any sort of real discourse. I mean, I listen to people and they say, well, C.C., you think I'm... And quite frankly, my family, the political part of my family has always been Democratic. My brother and I are registered as independents. I never felt as if... And have I voted Democratic? Mostly. Almost always. I would imagine maybe if I would have... I don't know. If I was old enough, maybe I would have voted for Nixon. Well, that was a mistake, but right. But
hey, give Nixon some credit. He was the one who tried to pioneer socialized medicine in the United States.
Right.
People don't know that the Obamacare, as we like to disparagingly call it nowadays, was originally Nixon care. And he did that with Kennedy. Well, of course not JFK, but who was the guy that was the senator for forever and ever? Was it Robert?
Teddy.
Ted Kennedy.
Yeah.
Sorry, my bad. I'm bad.
Yeah.
But Ted Kennedy, and he co-authored that.
Yeah.
They were going to do it together.
Yeah.
Because Nixon was trying, he was the one that privatized healthcare.
Right.
Turned into a total disaster. And tried to pull it back. And it was these now empowered healthcare lobbies came in, basically bought out the Democratic Party at the time to make sure that he did not push through his health care plan.
Right.
So it's ironic, the parties, that's the problem with party labels too, is it goes back and forth.
Yeah.
It was funny, I saw a Facebook meme where they're talking about the 1956 Republican platform, and I was like, wow,
you saw that, right? Yeah.
In 1956, I guess I was a Republican, because they were like, woo.
We probably voted for Eisenhower.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, Eisenhower was one of the people that warned us against what we're dealing with now. Demagogues. And he's like, I think that he ran for president, and I think he pretty much served as, he said, okay, the reason why he was in the military is he saw, and like some people, rather than just this short-sightedness that we mentioned before we started the show, but that some people have, this okay, so what benefits the community as a whole? Whether that community be a neighborhood, a county, a state, a nation.
Right.
The whole idea behind public education is that so we don't have a bunch of dummies.
Right.
And, people are like, well, we need to train people more I believe that. Mm-hmm. I believe that. I think that that there are people who want to serve and can be good at certain forms of labor. Like, we need artisans that do solid work. Sure. I'm a welder, but I'm not necessarily just an art welder. I'm a welder, and I can help build ships.
Absolutely. I mean, well, they said we kind of have with the huge push for everybody to get a college education, we gutted the trades.
But I think that we can still teach critical thinking even among people who have trades. I'm sorry. Maybe I misunderstood. No. But I think you're right.
I think you're right. I think that the fundamental problem we're facing now is we've vilified education.
Yeah.
We've vilified teachers, which is a whole separate problem. But we haven't solved anything.
Right.
We said, you know what? We all agree we hate those guys. They're all bad.
We like finger pointing.
Yeah, we like finger pointing. I do have a theory that there's the underlying motive may stem from the idea of we hate other people judging our parenting technique.
Yeah.
And the idea of giving somebody your child for 8 hours a day and them coming back and saying, well, that's not what Mrs. So-and-so told me. Or getting a letter saying, I really want to talk to you about your problems at home kind of thing. So, like, I kind of felt that this was reinforced recently when somebody said, I took my kids to see their grandma, and all of a sudden I felt like I was put on display.
Right.
And I'm going, this is how you're raising your kids? And now if you pay somebody to do that, I do think that there's always going to be an underlying pushback against teachers because they're taking care of your kids.
Right. Well, I mean, there is a spike in homeschooling, but
I'm sorry. Get back to what you were saying, though. I'm sorry about the.
Oh no.
The having the common standard. I'm not saying common core. Not but having a basic fundamental saying a fundamental guarantee of education, which is for the benefit of society. I mean, the thing is that
anybody can train.
Yeah.
And I think that those things are valuable, but
there need to be more avenues,
right?
Yeah.
And I think that a philosophy course can work for a welder as it can for a philosophy major.
Or how about, and on the flip side, basic economics. They say one of the biggest problems that people have is that if you taught a basic, not even economics, but like home economics kind of thing, finances to a high school student, they would never go out and get a credit card, and they'd never go out and get a student loan. But there's I mean, not to get too basic here, but if you look at it like I think that the conservatives seem to complain that liberals are too ivory tower, too abstract, and saying you need to learn philosophy because philosophy is good for you, right?
Right.
But then you got the other people who say education should be run as a business, and your children's brain is a product. I don't know how that works, but I think and we should eliminate the arts because the arts aren't really practical for the economy. And I think both is. I mean, philosophy is not bad.
Right.
So just throwing it out as it's not useful is silly. But I mean, actually, matter of fact, that's a current problem we're facing in Japan. They're talking about the national government's saying get rid of your arts and humanities programs. Ironically, not noticing that to become a politician, you're essentially entering into the humanities as a full-time career.
Yeah.
Anyway, but
agreed.
A kid doesn't know what they want to be from the get-go. Right. So for one, you want to expose them to these things. For two, it makes them a well-rounded individual.
Right.
You don't know what is going to be the trigger that is going to really set them on the path to something that makes them happy or successful or great. I mean, it may be that, you say, I want my kid to follow in my footsteps and be whatever, a carpenter or go into a trade. And he ends up saying, thank God I took that philosophy course because it made me a great businessman. You don't know what's going to be that something that catalyzes that thought in his head that makes him a success.
Most of the a lot of the people who do strict pre-law programs in college generally had problems in law school, whereas the people who majored in language and literature or philosophy were the best in law school, particularly understanding cases and understanding, where things are coming from. And I mean, studying the humanities, or they call it that because it makes us human, right? Mm-hmm. And so we can see all sides of humanity. And I think that trying to eliminate that is turning people into drones, which is fine for big corporations because they don't want people thinking. They want people buying their products without thinking about it.
And also, making them interchangeable components, and as they try to eliminate any kind of security for employment. Yeah. I like to pick on Uber as a good example of this philosophy of you've got everybody's an independent contractor. The corporation holds no obligation towards you.
Right.
But you supply, for example, you have to supply the vehicle and your time and your product and so on, and the success of your job is based on the whims of the customer saying, well, he didn't give me water when I got in the car, so I'm giving him 1-star rating. I mean, they rate you on a 1 to 5 star system, and they're company. I'm saying this is. I'm not, like I said again, Uber as an example, but
Right.
this is becoming like a thing where, say like you're Walmart and you fight against your employees unionizing, but at the same time you put a poster saying, "Hey, times are tough for some of the employees, so why don't we do a can drive so you can share food with other people that work at Walmart?" And it's like going,
Right.
when did this become normal? What were we talking about? I lost my train of thought.
Well, that's a good thing, right?
We were probably getting way too deep in the weeds anyway. Oh, we're talking about education.
Well, right. And I think, being an educator, just because I'm not doing it full time anymore, I don't necessarily say that I'm not, but I like I said, I see
Nowadays you mostly impart wisdom, right?
You're right. Yeah. But even here, this memorization and rote stuff, and some of that stuff is necessary because you have to train your mind. But at the same time, people don't make decisions. Even now, with what we have with religion and it's all of it is mindless. It's like, well, just do this and you can get this. We see that here in Japan.
Well, as a matter of fact, that's the irony is that the original Martin Luther's original complaint about Catholicism was how dogmatic it was.
Right.
If you follow all the proper steps, you will go to heaven. If you don't follow the steps, even if you were a good person,
yeah. Sorry. You're right.
Yeah.
And but again, the people who are on top of this pyramid, so to speak,
multi-level governmental structure.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But having other people being able to think for themselves makes them have to perform.
Sure.
And so rather than that, they would embrace their ultimate laziness and say, well, let me just cut off. They're not necessarily concerned with community. They'll tell you they are. People always say the quote-unquote right things.
Right.
Because Donald Trump said the right things to get him elected, but they're not the right things.
Well, ironically, it's like over the last 20, 30 years, the Republican Party has mastered the art of the soundbite. And they figured out that if we chop the information up into easily digestible, quotable bits, we can get a lot of people on board. I was surprised to discover that abortion originally was not part of the Republican platform, like the pro-life anti-abortion movement. It was a planned decision on their part, and at this point in time, and I think this is like in the 60s, the maybe 60s, 70s, the evangelical Christians in America had largely divorced themselves from politics, and the Republicans were like going, well, here's an untapped voter base. Let's get them on abortion. And the initial reaction of the evangelical ministers was, I thought that was a Catholic thing. Like, we don't really care about this.
Right.
And they literally commissioned movies be made that they could take around to these ministers and show them and convince them that they needed to get on board with the Republican Party to stop abortion. They literally sold them on it. And nowadays, of course, people think this is a platform. But what I find ironic about this... Okay, so like I said, my whole point here being to say that Trump is the ultimate expression of what the Republicans inadvertently created, which was marketing people on easily digested sound bites. And Trump, when he does his rallies, he riffs. He riffs on these things. He doesn't. He has actually, come out and said, "God, I don't even remember half the stuff I said." And I'm paraphrasing, but the point being, he's like, "Oh, I promised I wasn't going to let jobs out of Indiana. Crap, I better get on that."
Yeah, right.
And he realizes that as president-elect, he now has some power to do that, which is okay. That's the whole point. But the thing is that the Republican Party helped to create this monster, and I want to say that the Democrat Party and the liberals have played their own part, which is they got mortally offended by all of the horrible things that the Republicans were saying, and then it became a tit for tat, and it became, like I said, our team versus your team. And it became a team issue, and it became a tribal issue, and we turned it into this game. So they said the reason why Hillary Clinton lost the election was in the last few weeks leading up to the election, she was just like going, oh my God, he's making this so easy for me. All I have to do is say, look at this guy, he's horrible. And the people that were disenchanted with her at the very end were the ones who said, wait, you stopped talking about the issues, the economy, and how you're going to fix it.
All you did was say, look at this clown, look at this clown.
And they were like going, so you're not going to fix anything. Oh, okay, well, I'm going to vote for him.
I'm going to vote for the clown.
You know, I think it was a weird 3-part grouping, which is the first one was there was the Christian conservatives of the Bible Belt who felt that the progressive government of the last 8 years was vilifying Christianity by saying that if you are Christian, that automatically makes you racist and anti-gay and a bigot. And that's not exactly what I think the government was saying, or the people who represented this were saying, but that's what people heard. And there probably were enough people who were saying it outright, well, Christians are this and this and this. And they were like going, oh, great, you just made it into a religious persecution issue. So a bunch of people who felt persecuted for their religion voted for Trump. That was number one. Number two was the Rust Belt, which is still reeling from the, early 80s? When that thing collapsed? And have been patiently waiting for the last 20, 30 years, feeling like the American dream has been, pulled out from under them. They were like going, well, here's the guy who finally says he's going to bring the 70s back. Which, by the way, that's how the Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe, he's on that same ticket. He's like, we're going to bring back industrial manufacturing. It's like the reason why the 70s were the 70s was because they're the 70s.
Right,
I mean, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. Globalization is going to happen because of progress in technology and the information age. And even if you brought the jobs back, they're not going to give it to a human. They're going to give it to a robot. Because they're cheaper. They don't complain. They don't require health care.
So, I mean...
One robot tender can tend to 10 robots, right? So
it's Charlie in a chocolate factory.
Yeah.
Right? I can't work at the toothpaste factory anymore because there's just a machine that does my job better.
Exactly.
And, I mean, nobody's forward thinking because, well, quite frankly, too many people actually want to get elected. They want
to get elected.
Well, yeah, it's now it's this game that, I mean, you notice that nobody's voting for term limits.
Oh, well, no.
Right? And
although I have heard counter arguments to why term limits are bad, because it's like, apparently they tried to do term limits in like Michigan only, and it became a dog pile of everybody else saying, well, we're not, so you're out of here. So all the other people who aren't going to have term limits in their states are like, well, we can disregard you. And it did make local elections a lot more vicious because they're like going, well, we can basically start ignoring this guy every 6 years. So there's pros and cons, but yeah.
Well, I know if it's going to be done, it's got to be done across the board.
Right. I have a new respect for why the state system works so well for the United States. Part of it's just the sheer size. I mean, what's good for Alaska is not good for New York.
Right.
I mean, and that's, so but there are certain things that, as a society, as a united society, we benefit from. The EPA. You can hate the EPA, and the EPA certainly made its share of mistakes, but saying that, for example, environmental issues need to be handled on a state level is naive, because the atmosphere and our water system, the water cycle, do not respect state boundaries.
Right. Yeah.
So basically, North Dakota, which of course is currently in the news and is infamous for being hand in hand with the petroleum industry, and is currently destroying all their farmland with all the oil they spill out all the time, are upstream from everybody else. So you could have, say, like, I don't know, Tennessee could have the greatest environmental program of all time, and yet they're screwed because the Mississippi's polluted.
So all that sludge is going right.
Yeah. So I mean, and again, right now, even the west coast of the United States is suffering from the pollution blowing over from China. So again, there's certain things where you got to say this needs to be handled on a federal level just because it can't be helped.
Right. You can't. Right. And we have this culture of winning rather than a culture of truth.
Are you tired of winning?
I'm tired of people winning and everybody else. One person wins, a small group of people win, everybody else loses.
But they think that's just. They should be losing because I won.
Right, you're right.
But the sit down and shut up mentality, right?
Well, hey, you lost, sit down. And you know what? I think, and I tell people this all the time, and when I was teaching, when I was dealing with my ex-wife, I said, this is not a competition. If you want to have a competition, then we'll play a goddamn game. We'll play a game. We can play some basketball. We can play chess. We can play checkers. We can play paintball. Right? We can do all of these things.
Hungry Hippo?
That too. Sure. Right, yeah, right. Although I'd probably want to drink a little bit before I did that. Like, okay, this isn't fun. I need
you need to do it with your kid,
Yeah, but, right.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
I think for issues that affect humanity, whether they're small pockets of humanity, relatively speaking, on a global scale, when you say small pockets, you could be, a state. But whatever, we're still obsessed with this whole thing. Well, I'm going to win. Or if I don't win, I've lost. It's kind of like that argument where people say, well, don't say you're sorry because that's a sign of weakness.
Right.
Well,
come to Japan.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm like, no. It's a sign that you're a goddamn adult and that you're a free-thinking individual that is thinking about society at large. And if you don't think about society at large, then you will have no society, and pretty soon there'll be no people.
There's a thing. This is one of the things. Like when you look at something like I've tried to wrap my head around, like for example, the libertarian movement, because I literally go to their page and read their stuff, and it is interesting because a lot of the people who claim to be libertarians seem to be more of the kind of, I want to have my cake and eat it too. And I know it's a horrible quote, but bear with me. The idea of, I want to have all of my freedoms and all of my guns and all of my, hundreds of acres of land that are not beholden to the federal government, but I also want to magically enjoy the benefits of a functioning infrastructure.
Right. Yeah.
And who's going to pay for that?
Right.
And they're like, well, why don't we privatize that? This is the thing that always baffles me. Here's the consistency problem that we're suffering nowadays, which is I want to be able to have small government, so we should privatize everything. Well, privatization, functionally, what actually happens, typically ends up being the government granting companies, turning over something that they used to handle, turning it over to a company, which in essence is picking winners.
People aren't sufficiently round in their arguments.
I agree. Actually, I was thinking about the pro-life versus pro-choice issue, and what I have always found, what seems to be what would be a logical following, is that if you're pro-life, you should also be pro-welfare.
Right.
Because you're saying, we understand that sometimes children are born into bad situations, but they deserve to be born.
Sure.
Okay. Well, most times, when you have a situation where, maybe for medical reasons aside, a woman does not feel prepared to bring a child into the world,
right,
it's probably because that child may be getting born into a bad situation.
Right.
Okay. So are you willing to help her out in some form or fashion to ensure that she raises that kid and that kid has a good life? So it's not just that they have a life, they have a good life. Right. And they're going, well, everybody, I feel like people are saying, well, everybody has to, they're responsible for their own actions. Well, that kid is, and he just got born.
Okay, right.
And again, we're talking about, he's a blank slate.
Yeah.
And you're basically conceding that it's probable that he has been born into bad circumstances. So you're just basically kind of perpetuating the problem.
Yeah.
So the completion of the argument is, how far are you willing to take this?
Take this, right.
With this kid.
I mean, you say, well, no, you can't do that because that's bad. But denying, essentially starving a child into whether they die of starvation or not.
Yeah.
Whether they are malnourished and malformed and unable to either walk, talk, think, or whatever, handicapping that child, but telling them that they deserve to be alive.
Right.
I mean,
talk about a mixed message.
It's kind of weird, right? Because these are the same people who would, in many cases, not all cases, but in many cases, they love their guns. They like to go hunting, and they're like, oh my God, this deer's. Don't shoot the deer. Don't make it suffer.
Right.
You got to go right in the heart, and if the deer is suffering, get it out of its misery as soon as possible.
We are more humane to animals than we are to humans.
Exactly.
Problem, right?
It's just the arguments aren't whole. They're not round. Like when I cook, and people say, "Well, oh, C.C, I like these flavors," and I said, "Okay, what do you like about them?" In many cases, people like what they like. With people who like food, some people just eat to live, and that's fine. But they say, "Well, this is peppery, but it's not straight line, searingly hot."
Right.
I said, it tastes more round. And they said, yes. I said, well, that's the...
full flavored.
Right. And that's the if I use pepper in a dish, for instance, when we're done here, I'm going to make some mac and cheese, a batch. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to saute that celery and those onions. And there's a little bit of salt in there to help the vegetables weep a little bit. And the pepper is in there already, and the black pepper is in there. People say, "Oh, do you have a lot of?" I have a minuscule amount of red pepper in there, and the reason that I saute the black pepper is because if you just dump it in, then what you get is you get these flavors, and they're not working in a sort of harmony, and the black pepper just goes right at your tongue. But if I saute that with this butter and these onions and everything else, it infuses everything else. Ooh. And that flavor is spread out, and it tastes more, as we would say in the business, more round.
Sure.
They're not as direct. It's not a straight line. I mean, every once in a while that's nice. If you want a simple flavor profile, like the Japanese are very good at that.
Yeah.
And so I think that, going back to what we said, is people make these arguments, and there's these straight line arguments, and I'm like,
But what's the consequence of your argument? I think it's the question that people are failed to ask. Or the counter question being, what's the consequence? So saying, I really hate this because it offends me. Or, I am not against the idea of somebody saying, okay, all life should be valued, and I view this as hypocritical that we are against the death penalty, but we support abortion. Okay, I can see there's a certain reason to that, and far be it from me to declare when a life becomes viable. Okay, sure. So, as a society, say we can't allow this to happen anymore. Okay, so as a society, what are we going to do to ensure the quality of that life? And again, if you sit there and say, well, it's up to the individual, it's like, well, this is the tricky part about being a society, and I think this comes down to something that we were talking about recently, about the idea of people are forming groups, right? And forming tribes, and this collective idea is you want to not just lump people into a category, but we're kind of like lumping people into a category as a way of forgetting individual rights. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, right now especially, obviously part of the reason why our very first conversation is probably way too serious and heavy for its own good is we're still kind of recovering from the post-election shock. And,
I agree.
It is interesting times to live.
Yes.
But I think that a lot of the information overload has resulted in people saying, you know what I really want is for everybody else just to shut up. And they will get to that end by any means possible.
Right, yeah.
And if that happens to be voting for Trump, he is the big orange
right.
middle finger of the United States.
And well, again, people, there's the meme on Facebook. I've seen it pop up a few times. That the guy's talking about the lobster, and the lobster's uncomfortable, so it sheds its shell, and it grows a new one.
I have not seen this meme yet. Okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
There's a couple of different versions of it. One is the actual man talking about it. He says, so when a lobster wants to grow, it can feel that it's uncomfortable and it's pressing against, against its shell.
Yeah.
Since the shell doesn't grow, it sheds the shell and hides for a little while the new shell hardens, and then it's bigger. But it only grows when it's uncomfortable. And I mean, I get the analogy. It's not a direct analogy, but again, we grow from feelings of, like, okay, well, this isn't comfortable. How do I deal with it? But what we do now is how do I make it go away?
Right.
And we deal with that with racism in a large way.
Yeah.
All sides. And they're like, well, I don't want to be uncomfortable. And of course, a lot of minorities are like, well, we're uncomfortable all the time.
Yeah, was it? I love it. Post election, I got to watch Dave Chappelle make his comeback on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, I saw that.
And he's like, "This is how we feel all the time.
All the time, right? All the time.
Yeah, America's finally equal. We're all afraid.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I said, and I look at people, and they're like, "What?" And I said, you make a mistake, and sometimes you don't have a choice but to feel uncomfortable, and sometimes out of just sheer, this is what I'm looking for, term, survival instinct, you fix it. So I'm cooking, and even today I got burned. I tossed something into the roux, and it was really hot, and it splashed in there more than I wanted it to. And hot roux jumped out the pot, and it burned me. Now, this has happened twice. Now, am I going to be more careful next time? Yes. Was it as bad as the first time? No. Am I burned and uncomfortable? Yes. Will I have a couple of blisters tomorrow? Yes. Am I going to stop doing it? No. Have I had to... Another thing. We've all... For instance, most of us... Yeah, I'll say most. That could be 50.01%. So let's say most of us have been drunk and...
50.2.
Yeah, okay, right? And we say, and you wake up the next day and you're like... And then somebody tells you what you did or what you said and you're like, really? And what you do is, as uncomfortable as it is... You say, listen, apparently I did this and said this last night. I'm really sorry, and it's up to you as to whether or not we're cool. And then you back up.
And I think you'd be surprised how often the other person actually might be pretty decent about it.
Yeah.
And understanding. I actually had somebody on Facebook call me on something, and I was like, oh, wow, my bad, I got that wrong. And they were like, whoa. Yeah. I was prepared for this argument to go way out the deep end, and you're going to tie yourself in knots to justify it. And I was like, no, I looked it up, and you were right, and I was wrong. Whoops. And they were like, cool. But they actually now have more respect for me because I said, what's important to me is the truth.
Right.
And I don't want to. Yeah, I want to actually know what happened because nobody benefits from just sticking by your guns on something that simply isn't true. So anyway,
I agree.
I mean, and here we go with you were talking about the issue now. I think people are feeling reactionary and counter-reactionary to maybe a more recent, enhanced sense of minorities pushing back.
Right.
And I think that the liberal side has gotten to the point where they've gone from progressive to regressive. I think instead of a political spectrum, it's like a political color wheel. Where if you go far enough around, you actually wind up on the other side.
Right.
So, if you look at the rationale might be different, but the result is the same. I want everybody to shut up. So, cleaning the language. You can't use that word anymore. I heard somebody actually saying, "Oh, you can't use the word lame anymore." because it's offensive. And I was like,
right.
To people who hurt their toe? I mean, we've all been lame. But also, it's had the inadvertent side effect of, one, people, genuinely rotten people who are subverting a good cause for their own agenda. I mean, there's a commonality of not everybody who's in a cause is automatically a nice person.
Right, right.
I mean, just because they talk about the new label is identity politics, and just because you're a woman doesn't make you a good person. Just because you're black doesn't make you a good person.
Exactly.
At the same time, this is what I'm talking about, where collectivism now trumps individualism. In other words, the idea that if we were all treated fairly, where we were guaranteed equal opportunity rather than equal outcome, maybe life would tend towards being more decent for everybody.
I agree, but again, I think people want these outcomes that are guaranteed and absolute.
It's my turn now.
Right. Yeah. Right, or even if they said, well, if we did have these things, there'd always be a section of society that would be lazy, shiftless, and live off of. And we have that now. We have people with money who are like that.
Oh yeah, they said there's another one of them, like talking about like a lot of I haven't checked this number. 80% of billionaires don't have a college education, and I'm sure some people read that saying, "See, you don't need a college education to become a millionaire." The fact is that there's a huge number of these ultra wealthy people nowadays who got there from inherited wealth.
Right.
They don't have a college degree because they've never had to work a day in their life. And we, especially I think as Americans, equate being rich with some sort of affirmation that they deserve it.
Right.
Which, why? Money doesn't care who you are.
No. There's a...
Good people deserve to be rich. Well, then, my God.
Well, how about that? Yeah,
I can name several people off the top of my head who should be millionaires just by the value of their personality.
Exactly. No, and I think that's... there was a set of science...
It's fine. The microphone's fine.
There's a set of... the Wheel of Times fantasy.
Oh, I love that. Right.
You love the Wheel of Time?
From the beginning to the end. It took me forever because...
right. And then waiting for him to... come on, Mr.
He literally died before he finished it.
Right.
Anyway.
So, somebody was asking me about it once, and, that whole deal with the Aiel. And, they said, well, what's that? I said, you don't see why they think that these wetlanders are a little nuts? And they're like, why? I said, because every time they talk about, nobility and they deserve this and I'm a noble and you're a peasant and whatever, and they start looking at them, and I said, and they're crossing their eyes and they're thinking these people are nuts because they think inherited wealth is just an accident. So I'm rich from an accident of birth.
Right. Exactly. It's like, it's like the mathematical solution to the 50% of wealth being concentrated in, I think the numbers are like 62 people worldwide.
Yeah.
Mathematical solution would be to kill the 62 people and redistribute
right.
wealth.
How about that?
And I'm not advocating that, but you would literally double the fortunes of everybody on the planet by eliminating less than 100 people. That's insane. Yeah. That is insane. And the thing is that it's at the point, when does being wealthy become a millstone around the neck of everybody else, like a parasitic thing? It's like that money isn't doing anything.
Right.
It's literally wealth that has been removed from
it's just gone.
Equation. It might as well not exist.
Right. It does no work. It does no. It exists.
Doesn't create jobs. That's what people are going to say. Oh, it creates jobs. No,
it doesn't. It creates. It's there so that the owner can say, "Look what I have."
It's like a high score on a video game. Like I have this many points.
Yeah.
A bit. I mean, the old joke.
At least
about,
you had to work to get that.
Yeah. Well, and that's the old joke about, like, what is it? Rich people didn't get rich by spending money.
Right.
And again, that may be a little bit cynical too, but again, it's like you got, if you believe in, like, say, true racial equality or true sexual equality, that's great.
Yeah.
But you don't have to put one above the other.
Right.
Because who does that benefit? You're literally creating you're saying this class of people is better than the other. Just because you've turned the table saying, well, for example, white men have been standing on the necks of everybody else for forever, so it's our turn. Well, you're saying you don't object to you don't object to the system.
Yeah.
You just want to be in the driver's seat.
You just want to be in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
You know that game. I remember saying this, and I think inwardly, we're going to put that outside. It's okay. That was a box.
No worries.
But the game, what was it? An Asshole? I'd never played it before in my life. Yeah, it's a card game. It's a party game.
Okay.
So essentially, I would imagine that it's probably got some milder names in certain places or whatever. And I had never played it until I was in my 30s. And I'm hanging out with some friends, and we're in we had rented a ski house for the season, and so it was one of those nights, skiing was over, and we were all hanging out, and so everybody says, let's play Asshole. I'm like, well, I don't know how to play. Okay, so there's someone who's the president, and then there's a vice president, or there's some titular things going on. Uh-huh. And then on the bottom there's an asshole, in this case, this is the asshole, and then I guess there was the vice asshole, right, of, second up, one rung up from the bottom. Now, and then there's everybody else in between. Now, everybody's trying to, get to the presidency or the top
and avoid
rung.
being the asshole?
Right. Okay? And, it's cards, they're shuffled, so blah, yada, yada. So what happens after all the cards are shuffled, and again, the exact rules escape me, but, it's got to do with who's got a better cards, blah, blah, blah. So what I said to myself, and I quickly became, for some reason or other, I was the asshole at one point. And I said, okay, well, I guess I'm on the bottom now, so let's go, so I can pull myself out of this hole. And they said, since you're the asshole, you have to give up your 2 best cards to the president. And one rung up asshole, vice, has to give it one of his best card to vice president or whatever. And I said, what? So I did it. And then, I saw how that worked. I mean, I figured I knew how it worked. Let me check. Yeah, and that's how it worked. So it took me a little while to get out of that whole thing. And I remember saying after the third time, and, I was giving up my 2 best cards, and I couldn't get out of there. And I went, hey, man, white people invented this game. I said, there's no way that any minority, I said, if this game did come out of Africa, definitely it was in a country where blacks are the majority. Because this is really? I said, y'all know, I studied, history too, like that's part of the whole literature experience, right? The whole idea that I had to work twice as hard and yada, 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 right. And they're just looking at me and I went, we're playing a game, so I'm not, I said, but the whole idea behind this, I said it's kind of uncomfortably reflective for me, right? and I said, no, I'm going to keep playing. So, I think we went back the next week and I played, and we played again. Fine, you know what? It's a game. I'm going to, right. I'm not going to sit here and weep over a game.
This sounds like the first time somebody tried to explain Amway to me.
Oh my God! Right,
shades of Amway.
So I remember at the time, then I sent it to the top rung, and there's some other things too. For instance, you can suggest that people go get snacks from the kitchen, and
sure,
pretty much, right, stuff like that. And so when I was, they said, "Oh, C.C., you're the president," and I said in my best Yul Brynner voice, I am not president. You will refer to me as Kind Pharaoh. I am Kind Pharaoh. Hey, C.C. Nope, Kind Pharaoh. And so they just kept saying it. They got aggravated. I don't want to say that anymore. I just want to say, oh, you're uncomfortable. Right. And you have to do, wow.
You have to do something you didn't like. Yeah.
I said, and I'm not even making you do anything mean. Right, I'm not making anybody go and pee and write their name in the snow outside, or fetch me a beer. I'm not doing any of that. I'm just making you call me kind Pharaoh.
Why did that bother people so much? I would think it's funny.
Because
honestly.
they can't think about it. They weren't comfortable. I don't think it was because I could have said, call me president, and they would have done it, because those words just come.
Why do people want to go through life running on autopilot? That baffles me.
Because it's easy.
I mean, well, to be fair, I might be a happier person if I did. But,
we say that, but I mean, if you really have any intelligence, then chances are you kind of want to make some kind of a difference in some way, shape, or form.
Sure.
But I mean, a lot of people think that they like being on autopilot, and then they figure that they all kind of sort of, when I'm ready to get out of the reverie, then I'll do something, and then I want to go back to autopilot.
Yeah.
But, and then we assume that people who are money, elite, or whatever, who are on autopilot to us, and maybe many of them are, they're on autopilot. Donald Trump's got to be on autopilot.
The thing is that this is a man. I mean, I don't have to reiterate his remarkable history of failure and fraud, but the thing is that he's got a certain inertia about him where when you get to his point in life, you can afford it. He can literally afford to be on autopilot. Yeah, because his companies and his lifestyle, his system will continue ticking along. He's 70 years old. It will continue ticking along with little to no effort on his part because of the sheer inertia behind it. And I mean, I don't blame the man for that. I mean, that he has many flaws, but that is how life works. It's like my mom likes to say, be nice to your grandma. She's paid her dues. It's kind of that same thing where you get to a certain point in life where I guess my grandmother's particular case is just to say that when you get to that age, you deserve a little bit of leniency. But also the idea that you have a certain status and stature, you don't have to be flexible anymore.
But that still doesn't excuse straight up. I mean, I understand sometimes people say things without thinking because they're literally not wired. Like the guy that had the bike, he re-engineered the front handlebars to so that they worked counter. So in other words, to turn the bike, you're right, and it literally took him 3 days to learn how to ride the bike again.
Sure.
And everything was, he was just like,
you can rewire your brain, yeah.
Right, but it took time, and people, and if they don't see a benefit in it, like, well, it doesn't help me if I'm, where's the benefit for me? And we can say, well, you're teaching your brain how to rewire itself for situation. Well, I'm not expecting that to happen. I don't see the point. Yeah. I don't see the point, and I'm like, well, I completely see the point. As soon as one of these volcanoes, as soon as Yellowstone goes up, since the whole fucking park is the caldera, they were like, we can't find the caldera. And then they went, oh.
You weren't seeing any better.
Okay. So the whole park is a caldera.
Right.
All right. We kind of literally, right.
Whoops.
Yeah. We were looking over there, and it was just all around us.
Yeah, I agree. It's like, it's funny. It's those people who lack. I feel it's the same people who lack the ability to empathize with people that are not in their immediate line of sight, as it were.
Right.
Why should I care? Because it's the same thing. Why should I care? Because it's not my problem. The guy who says I don't like
Spider-Man dealt with that.
The guy who says I don't like black people, but I like this guy because he's my friend. It's like,
right.
But he's black. Everybody has the older relative where you've had to explain that you're not allowed to say that anymore. Say for example, this race is this way because of genetics, kind of thing. Like, they're genetically stupid or whatever. But I think also, and especially as Americans, I think have a tendency to enjoy narratives. Yeah. Like certain, like we create, we're the world's leading creator of movies and television and that kind of stuff. So we are the masters of storytelling in that way. And I mean, I'm not going to argue about the benefits of other countries and their various arts, but we as Americans, we really have mastered the simplicity of boiling a narrative down to its basics and saying, like in a movie, like I was listening to a podcast where they're talking about how this guy wants to watch his kid watch he wants his kid to watch Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Mm-hmm. This kid's falling asleep because a 1970s movie, the pacing is a little bit slower than what we're used to now. Whereas nowadays, it's like you want an action movie, you go watch Jason Bourne, and it's basically a bunch of fight sequences linked together with a bit of a plot. Right. But the point is that you got the pure, distilled what you want. And I think the same thing when it comes to we have that we have the love of narrative. We have a certain purist ideal. I say puritanical. Yeah. I mean, that is the people that came to settle the country, and it's become kind of part of the DNA of the society. And we have that lovely 400-year racism issue. We have the displaced natives issue. And you got a certain resentment from people who are saying, okay, I was like, maybe, I don't know, maybe, starting from people my age, my generation, Generation X, saying, I was born after all that. Why should I still feel on the hook for this? And I can see their point, but again, you as an individual are a member of this society, and it's not like you got to sit there and say, well, I got to pay reparations, but you can at least not be a dick about it.
Right.
You know, so it's like people like the pipeline in Standing Rock is a big deal, right?
Yeah.
Right? And it, to me, was very cut and dried. You know, I have a couple friends back home in Oklahoma who are Native American. I like them just fine. I've studied American history. I know that I'm not close enough to the issue to have a well-informed opinion, but this one was pretty cut and dried, which was the city of Bismarck in North Dakota complained about, was it North Dakota, Bismarck?
Yeah.
And they complained about the pipeline was going to damage their water.
Yeah.
So they said, oh crap, okay, we'll move it. This was the Army Corps of Engineers. Right. They moved it down to the reservation. And they fast-tracked the permit, which is code for we didn't do everything we were supposed to. So for me, it was a simple matter of, regardless of the people involved, the Army Corps admitted they didn't do their job, and that nobody should do anything until they did. And it turned into this big fiasco. But again, it's like, if they could go in there and say, we did our job, we did the survey, and you know, if you put the pipeline in here, it's not going to hurt anybody, I'd be like, okay. You know, he said, she said of you're disturbing our sacred ground thing. Again, I'm not well enough informed on that to have an opinion. But as far as the water source, being the Missouri River of all things, kind of a big deal. It is something that concerns me, and I found out that from a geologist from Canada said, I actually had an interaction with them saying, in Canada, this type of pipeline is banned from being near any water source because they always leak. Jesus. It is illegal to build this kind of pipeline and it's not the oil; it's the additional lubricants they pump through to keep the oil flowing. Because contrary to popular belief, oil is not just oil. It's actually a bit sticky. So it's those chemicals that leach out and destroy everything. And I've lived in an area of Oklahoma where the water table has been permanently messed up by they do the wastewater injection, and it got into the water table, and you try to make a bath, and you could put soap in the water, and instead of it turning into bubbles, it would curdle like it looked like cottage cheese. Yeah, it was weird because the water was so full of salt, and it tasted funky, milky. It didn't taste salty. It's not salty per se, but we had to drive 15. Kind of salts, probably bad kind, probably Flint, Michigan. We had to drive 15 miles one way to a local artesian well. We'd fill up the pickup with a pickup full of gallon jugs to go get fresh water. That would last us a month. Now, luckily, this water was free. Right. But that's the solution that locals had chosen because they didn't have any choice. So I've been in that situation. Mm-hmm. It sucks, and it was also bad for the farmland. Yeah, it ruins the. So I mean, it's not just corn did. It's not just bleeding hearts feeling sorry for the Native Americans. It's like, no, this sucks. This is not funny. You should not screw around with this.
Yeah, stop doing it. Right.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, but like I said, I think that we need to. I mean, I think the liberal side of the country wants to do themselves some favors. They need to back off from the safe spaces and the whitewashing the language and the
Right.
Don't use my trigger word kind of crap, and just but at the same time, we need to, if you want to respect people's rights, treat them like individuals, treat them like people.
Yeah. Always.
I think if what you do doesn't hurt me, I got no problem with it.
Yeah.
What you do in the privacy of your own home, you marry who you want,
right?
Whatever, and if but at the same time, it's like, if we both benefit from the eat your vegetable variety of laws, such as don't pour stuff in the water, it's good to pay taxes just so that we can have a road that runs through our town, that kind of stuff.
Right.
I think that we can kind of agree that kind of stuff needs to be taken care of, and it doesn't have to be some kind of religious thing or social crusade.
People need to stop trying to win half-baked arguments.
And also, we need to also say, well, let's try something for the time being. It's like, don't come to me unless you have a perfect solution. It's not how life works.
No.
If you're going to wait for that, you're going to be sitting on your thumbs for
the
rest of your life, It's not, let's try something out.
Right, yeah, definitely.
But anyway, thanks for...
It was a pleasure, definitely.
We're
going to be doing this again really soon.
I have to, like I said, we'll have to figure out a name.
Yeah, we're going to figure out a name, you all.
And hopefully be more lighthearted in the future.
No, we'll get it together, don't worry.
Yeah, this is the first time out, and, we're just, talking. But, hey, next time will be... basically the end of the year. We can kind of like do a more festive or reflective or looking forward.
What do we do? Can I say holiday? Is that like against the law now? Right.
Yuletide.
Okay, I'll say that. Okay.
And the Earth has once more swung around the sun. Woohoo!
Here we go. Woo! 66,000 miles an hour, baby.
That's right.
All right. You have a good one.
Yep, you too.
Thank you.
Catch you next time.
Thank you all for listening.